it this way now. Hey guys, this is Reverend Schonau over at the Center Path, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Buddhism as a spiritual practice. And Buddhism as a spiritual practice, and we just jump right into it. We already did the intro and stuff like that. So the Buddhism as a spiritual practice becomes more individualized and becomes more centered on you. Now this is the way the Buddhism started, right? The Buddha himself was looking for salvation from his own suffering. Later on, as he developed compassion, he saw that all animals suffer, that all beings that are sentient suffer, and we'll talk all about sentient beings later. That all things that suffer, and they suffer because they want to live comfortably into the next moment, and it's difficult. And if you just observe a little bit, you'll see how difficult it is for something like a rabbit to live into the next moment happily and with safety, or a bug, or a bird, or a dog, or a pigeon, or whatever. If we start to understand that, we start to really look at the world and be a part of that world and really absorb ourselves in our world. I mean, if we live in the city, we see many different animals as well. You may see raccoons at night, or foxes, or coyotes, or perhaps you even see possums and rats and squirrels and things like that. They have a hard life. There are people who have very hard lives. You see them, some of them are living out their lives as humans in the animal realm, or humans in the hungry ghost realm, or humans in the conflict realms, or maybe they're living in the hell realms themselves. And these are very literal things, and this is how we want to start seeing the world. We want to start using the Buddhist philosophy, right, and the Buddhist religious practices, and apply it to our daily lives. And that's where it becomes important. This is where the kind of rubber hits the road. This is where you actually get something out of it. When you start actually applying this to your own life. Okay, you start seeing yourself as part of the world, and the world is part of you. Your interdependence in those. So, as a spiritual process, we're looking at a little bit more individually. It's a little bit more internalized. The locus of control, we say, like where control comes from, is not from out there. It's not from books. This goes with the advice of the Palamas. So if you've ever seen that one, look that one up. I'll maybe do a whole work on that, the advice to the Palamas. That's a whole thing about what not to do when studying and practicing. It's very important to understand. And it's a cornerstone in a lot of Buddhist teachings, because Buddhism is experiential. Okay, Zen especially is extremely experiential. You have to drink the water. You have to taste it. You have to feel its weight. You cannot take by any means at all, like whether it's the guru or the writings or because you think you know. You have to know. And that's what Buddhism is really about. It's the process of knowing, the process of understanding in your life. And so when you're working at this kind of thing, spiritually that is, be open to trying all this stuff at the buffet. Now if you go to a Tibetan place, do the prostrations. They're important to do. If you go to a Thai place, do their prostrations. Do their offerings. Wake up early in the morning and wait for the monks to come by, or go to the temple and make the offerings with them. This is an important part to show your compassion for others, your helpfulness to others, and your understanding of the process, and the understanding of the human condition, and the understanding of the conditions of the world. You see things differently if you're really contemplative, and you're really getting into that kind of thing. It's hard to do, because you may have to drive through traffic to get there, and it's very hard to be spiritual when you're in traffic, but you can do it. Okay, it's little tiny bits. Those little tiny bits will build like little tiny Legos. Okay, eventually you'll have this big tower of power in your spiritual practice. If you want to add in things like crystals and stuff like that, that's fine. But you need to also understand why those things aren't in Buddhism. Okay, why we don't have those things. We don't have a lot of. You do see amulets. You do see luck charms. You do see icons. You do see different things, right? We see a lot of this different stuff, whether it's gongs or something like that. Those are all add-ons. The Buddha did not have those. The Buddha only had the ground below him and the sky above and him right in the middle. And that's what he started to realize. Okay, everything else was added on to that. And you can start looking that up and you can see it is true. there wasn't, any of the vajras and the dorjes and the bells and the whistles and the shakujos and all those kind of different tools were added on from somewhere else. Okay, and we'll go over some of the tools too, because they're very interesting, and I think they're very, very important meditative practices and contemplative practices, and actually very good focusing tools for those kind of things. We'll go over a bunch of different ones at some other time, malas and things like that. So anyway, this is Reverend Sean over at the Centered Path, and today we're talking about being spiritual on this path, as opposed to being religious or opposed to being just philosophical. Remember, philosophical is being like into the books, discussing and understanding the concepts. The application of it is going to be, the application of it by yourself is the spiritual practice. The application of it in a community is the religious practice. So you can approach it at any of these. People often say that it's not a religion, it's not a religion, it's not a religion. It's a way of life. And it is. But unless you understand and unless you appreciate those other parts, you'll never be able to understand that. You'll never really grasp it. You should get into the religious aspect. You don't have to be so far in it that you get lost. You always need to be self-sufficient. This is like someone who jumps into the river on a raft where they have no paddle. They have no way to get to the other side. If there's rapids, you're going to go down. You're going to go the way that the river's going. You can't get across. You have to have a way to get across. And the way to get across is through your own effort only. You can't, there's no such thing as a free ride. You don't just hop in the boat and just sit there and wait for it to happen for you. You're going to go down the river and over the waterfall. You have to paddle. Sometimes you have to paddle furiously. Sometimes against the current. Sometimes with the current. Sometimes there's hardly any paddling at all. Sometimes it's very still. Depends on you. That's our karma, right? But when we get to the other side, we don't need it anymore. We don't need that process. We let go. We let go of those teachings when they're part of us. We've achieved our goal. When you've become compassionate, you don't have to worry about it anymore. When you've become more wise, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You do your compassion practice because it's part of you. You're already there. You do your wisdom practice, it's part of you. You do your generosity practice, it's part of you. You do your practice of metta, you do your practice of karuna, you do any of these ahimsa, any of these kind of practices, you do them because they're part of you. And you're now making that a part of the world. So see, that's how you become, as a spiritual person, you open up and change the entire world. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Anyway, this is Reverend Sean again. Sorry about the extra part there. This is kind of a shorter one. Don't forget to go to the website, www.centeredpath.org. It's all free stuff, man. I mean, I've got a cheat sheet on there for you. You can look up the different parts that I've gone through. These are kind of like the basics of Buddhism. And this is to start to get you familiar with it so that you learn to ask the right questions. And the right questions come from you to you. And they may come to me and they may come to other people, but it's a good point to start to really look at these things and vet them out a little bit scientifically for yourself. Okay, because this is all about your work for you and not following. This is a self-serve kind of thing. Buddhism is done by example, right? You do by convincing, not you convince, not convert, because people will change based on your example. If you're having a good life, which I'm lucky enough to have because I've been practicing stuff, I see things totally differently because of this practice. Now, I don't do a lot of the prostrations. I do for this kind of thing. I do go to temples and I do the prostrations, the chanting, and the meditations and stuff. And I have my own meditation practice that I do, and I also help to teach people and I help to tutor them through this process. So basically, I'm kind of like either a cheerleader or I help row as you're going across this body of water to the other side. So when you've been there, you come back and you help others maybe. And that's where I guess I am. So go to the website, check that stuff out, print them out for yourself, and don't forget to follow the classes because I've done them in order and I'm still working on them. So I'm doing 3 parts here for this entire class because we're doing a section on the meditative process. We're doing sections on basics of Buddhism, and then like this one here is more of the philosophical and kind of like helping us to define our own practice. So take care of yourselves, take care of others, and be wise about that.